What frequently drives you nuts about today's youth and some of the common practices and expressions, which are not only youth-related, by the way, that have apparently, for good or ill, become part of our culture? Let me share with you some of my observations and reactions, and then you can compare them with yours. Let's begin with the use of language. Number one, nobody seems to say you're welcome when I say thank you. Now the response is no problem. Did I suggest there was a problem? No, all I did was express gratitude for a common courtesy or a kind act. Number two, everything, even the little inconsequential, is awesome. Not good, not nice, not okay, awesome. It makes me wonder what word to use when something is really awesome. Number three, me and her went to the mall, or me and him had a good time. Would anyone say me went to the mall or him had a good time? I don't think so. But this is now a form of speech which one hears all the time. Number four, the use of four-letter words has become an everyday part of speech. Words that were once pretty well restricted to the locker room can now be heard on the street and coming equally for males and females of various ages. How about fashion? Now that will get your blood flowing and your dander up. My favorite, of course, is the male style where baggy pants are worn halfway down the rear end, so that one has to walk like a penguin and manually hold the trousers up at the waist. And admittedly, I also sometimes walk a bit like a penguin. But that's because I've got arthritis in my left ankle, not because I'm losing my pants. For the girls, it seems to be hip huggers, no matter how much hip thus winds up hanging out and over. Males more and more and of all ages wear their hats indoors, even in restaurants and sometimes in churches. And somewhat related, tattoos are definitely in and everywhere, with rings, nose rings, tongue rings, navel rings, and rings stuck in private places where they've got to hurt like crazy, running a close second. While on vacation, I saw a young lady in shorts with one leg so tattooed that it looked like she was wearing long pants just on that one leg. And when coming back from the ICCC conference in Omaha, I was on the plane with a young man whose hair was flying all over the place and stuck up so high that it just about touched the overhead bin where he was sitting. Let me end this portion of the sermon with first a musical and then an activity reflection. I really don't like or understand rap. It's not the kind of thing one could hear and then walk around humming. And the only ones dancing to it are those producing it while grabbing themselves in various parts of their anatomies. Also, the constant and overuse of the cell phone for texting, tweeting, twittering, chirping, purring, and whatever else can be done with them, even by people to one another while standing next to one another, simply baffles me. I've had a strange thought that brought to mind a disturbing picture. Imagine this, in 50 or 60 years, we will have thousands, perhaps millions of old men and women running around with tattoos and holes all over their bodies, and rap music will be considered golden oldies. Okay, there's my partial list, and I am sure that you've got one also. But for the most part, our negative reactions would largely be aimed at those with habits and practices different than our own, and usually of ages different than our own. Each of us usually displays little or less animosity toward what is done by those of our own generation. But those of other time periods, well, we think they've got it all wrong. Now, there's nothing new about all this. Think back for a minute and recall when your parents objected to regarding the customs of your generation as you were growing up. Usually, then as now, it's centered around clothing, hair, speech, music, interests, habits, trends, and so on. There is evidence that Socrates, back in Greece during the 4th century BC, thought the youth of his day were going to hell in a handbasket. Some things never change. I want to do something a bit different this morning. So I am going to ask you to contribute to and assist with the sermon by taking a look now at that insert in your bulletin. It is a kind of generational quiz. Take a few moments, and I'll keep quiet, to do the quiz, and then we will talk about it. Okay, what about your answers? Did you pretty consistently pick the responses following the same letter? While there might have been some line jumping or overlapping, I think that for the most part, you would have remained by and large an A, B, C, or D. Now let me share a bit of additional information with you about your generation, and then we will move on. The quiz represented the experiences and reflections of what we might call the 4 most common generations. Veterans, those are the ones born between 1925 and 1944. Boomers, 1945 to 1964. Gen Xers, 1965 to 1981. And Millennials, 1982 to 2000. The members of which evidenced often marked and profound differences in various categories. So see how you relate to the following, and copies of the list I'm just going to share with you now will be available on the orange juice table as you leave the sanctuary after the service. What about life-shaping events and experiences? For veterans, they were the Great Depression, World War II, the New Deal, the Korean War, unions, the silver screen, and radio. For boomers, the Vietnam War, the women's liberation movement, blended families, civil rights, the Cold War, space travel, assassinations of famous and or important people. For the Gen Xers, fall of the Berlin Wall, Desert Storm, single-parent households, computers, Atari, MTV. For the millennials, Columbine, Oklahoma City bombing, 9/11, the digital age, email, and cell phones? What about the heroes and heroines and influential figures of people in the different generations? For veterans, they were James Dean, Lenny Bruce, Marlon Brando, Lee Iacocca, John Glenn, and Joe DiMaggio. For boomers, Elvis Presley, Bill Gates, Mick Jagger, Jack Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi. For the Gen Xers, Oprah, Ronald Reagan, Colin Powell, Princess Diana, Michael Jackson, and Bruce Springsteen. And for the millennials, nobody in particular. What about dominant personality traits? Well, veterans are proud, rebellious, conservative, independent, traditional, perseverant. Boomers are self-confident, rebellious, youthful, driven, loyal to their peers, and optimistic. Gen Xers tend to be entrepreneurial, cautious and skeptical of tradition, fiercely independent, confident, materialistic, and straightforward. And millennials are entrepreneurial, techno-sophisticated, high-energy, social, self-absorbed, fiercely competitive, optimistic, have short attention spans, are motivated and resilient. How about work modes? Veterans, disciplined, high work ethic, detail-oriented, logical, direct, rules-centered, respect for authority, loyal to their employers, command and control leadership style, formal communication. The boomers are team players. They demand respect from younger workers. They question authority, are success-driven, value change, consensus and collaboration leadership style, and face-to-face communication. Gen Xers are task and results-oriented. They want structure and direction. They work fast. They're focused, creative, adaptive, loyal to individuals who shape their lives, deadline-oriented. They challenge others' leadership styles, direct and indirect communication. And millennials are multitaskers. They have a can-do attitude. They learn by doing. They're achievement-oriented, tolerant, participative leadership style, email, voicemail, texting communication. And the last one, what are the different generations' key issues and core values? For veterans, it's family, saving money, security, history, respect for rules and authority, duty before pleasure, honor. For boomers, it's children, education, consensus, involvement, teamwork, health, happiness. The Gen Xers, family, friends, fun, work-life balance, saving money, diversity, continuous learning, flexible scheduling, autonomy, and they are desirous of recognition. And finally, the millennials. They put leisure and fun before work. Saving and spending money is important. Education, meaningful work, global outlook, optimism, civic duty, achievement, and diversity. Can you see better now why we sometimes have trouble working well together and understanding one another? We are shaped by our life experiences, and our different life experiences result in different ways of looking at life. And this reality is the reality in the church, as well as in all other instances and circumstances, institutions, and organizations. In the business world, for example, human resources people are more and more forced to accept attitudes they don't like, because they need a workforce to be supplied by folks who have different goals and priorities than their own. And in the church, the older generation claims to want new blood and really believes it does, but wants the new blood to be exactly the same as the old blood. It's not going to work, and I'm sure it should not work. Again, this is not a new